Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint by Sing Shong. Chapter 81. SSS Grade Talent. Part 1. I frowned at Yu Jong-hyuk's words. Move to the east right now? I saved his life and now he was giving me an order? I was a bit annoyed, but Yu Jong-hyuk spoke before I could say anything. The disaster of questions is waking up. What? I was frustrated because I couldn't understand what he was saying and Yu Jong-hyuk frowned. Someone is waking the disaster up. After a while, Han Soo-young and I left Lycaon, who was still receiving enlightenment, and headed for Gongdong-gu. It was at a tremendous pace. Can we just leave that wolf? The Imyantar can feel the master of the medallion. He will come find us when he wakes up. Rather, I looked at Han Soo-young running beside me and said, "Can't you carry him? You can use your avatar." "I don't want to." The disgusted Han Soo-young quickly moved away from me. "Didn't you say earlier that Yu Jong-hyuk might not be a bad guy? That is that, and this is this. Isn't he the one who cut my head off?" I couldn't say anything to refute her words. Yu Jong-hyuk spoke through midday tryst. "You can leave me. I don't need help. Don't be so prideful. I really will abandon you." I couldn't see Yu Jong-hyuk's face because he was being carried on my back. "When will you be able to move by yourself?" "In 2 days." "Will you kill me when you recover?" I asked half-jokingly, but this bastard didn't give an answer. I deliberately reduced the pace at which I was moving. "Then I can't help you. How can I believe a guy who is trying to kill me?" "I will help you if you swear an oath of existence. Swear not to kill me until the end of this regression." "I can't do that." "Lousy bastard. Then swear you won't hurt me until the 5th scenario is over." "If you can't do that, I really won't help you." Yu Jong-hyuk thought for a moment before replying. "I swear." Surprisingly, Yu Jong-hyuk agreed to the oath. The oath of existence. It was a constraint on the person who swore it. A cold flame emerged from Yu Jong-hyuk's body and dug into his heart. If he broke the oath, this blue flames will burn his heart. I felt a bit relieved, but then Yu Jong-hyuk continued. "I won't kill you. But I will hit you once." "What?" I was dazed for a moment. He was going to hit me? Is this because of 2 days ago? Yu Jong-hyuk didn't answer again. I thought it was strange that Yu Jong-hyuk agreed to the oath so easily. "It is 1 hit. I'll do it gently. Understood?" Yes, it might not be bad if 1 hit could restore my relationship with Yu Jong-hyuk. In my current state, I wouldn't die from one of Yu Jong-hyuk's blows. Shortly after that, we crossed Cheongdam Bridge and entered Gwangjin-gu. I felt the surrounding ecology change little by little. Grass was growing on the streets, and instead of rotting bodies, the smell of monster feces filled the area. The trunk of a huge plant emerged from the ground and wrapped around the surrounding high-rise buildings. The 7th grade plant species Yanasplita is on the lookout. I spoke to Han Soo-young, who was pulling out a weapon. "Don't act so rashly. It is fine as long as we don't attack first." "Don't these type of monsters suddenly attack with tentacles?" "That is just in the manhwas. They are gentle. Just be careful not to step on the roots." At the top of the building, the head of the plant that resembled a sunflower followed after us with its eyes. It seemed scary, but it was actually a good monster. This didn't mean that the situation was optimistic. The plant species originally came after the Great Hall was fully opened. The terraforming has started. Terraforming. The 5th scenario was world versus world. Humanity fought against the worlds that were coming. Just like Seoul was suffering from the erosion of Kronos, China would be facing the 3rd Murim world while Japan would be facing the White Demon world. Han Soo-young scouted around with avatars and said, "It is a monster colony. Damn. The terraforming will be even faster if the disasters awaken." "What type of person is waking up the disaster?" "A person like you. You woke up the fire dragon." Han Suyang bit her lips. Didn't you tidy it up? At that time, the intermediate Dakibi placed a penalty on the fire dragon. And what if I didn't kill it? Don't tell me that you would catch it? There was a penalty? Then didn't it benefit us to catch a weakened disaster? The disaster of questions has no penalty. It is questionable if the Dakibi would even place a penalty on it. We moved quickly to avoid the monster's colony. In the streets, the ground rats and growls were eating corpses. Looking at the traces of the destroyed monsters, Yu Zhonghyuk seemed to have come through this path. Yu Zhonghyuk was great to walk so far in this physical condition. I spoke to Yu Zhonghyuk. I have a question. Why come to me? I honestly thought you would commit suicide. Suicide? How ridiculous. If he had seen his future in the 8th turn, he wouldn't be able to say this. I was a bit confused by his next words. If I was going to give up so easily, I wouldn't have started this journey. It really felt like the first time I read Ways of Survival. I thought that maybe Han Suyang was right. The Yu Zhonghyuk I believed I knew was the Yu Zhonghyuk who easily gave up, easily killed people and repeatedly caused numerous tragedies. However, the Yu Zhonghyuk of the 3rd round wasn't yet like that. Maybe I didn't know the Yu Zhonghyuk of the 3rd round. Your understanding of the character Yu Zhonghyuk is increasing. In the meantime, Yu Zhonghyuk said. I thought of you right away. I thought you would be a bit of help since you are the one who smashed the absolute throne. You aren't going to say anything about me breaking the throne? I don't want to talk about what already happened. In addition, I thought about it. You must have done it to rule out the god of the other world. You know? I was honestly frightened because I had never really spoken to Yu Zhonghyuk before. Putting aside his coolness, this bastard had such a great mind? Yu Zhonghyuk kept speaking. Honestly, I think it isn't a bad way. The problem is what happens next. After you crushed the throne, the guides were scattered and there was a setback in collecting the meteorite. This is why the terraforming of Guangjinggu and Gondonggu is so fast. The wanderers are using the power of the meteorites. What do you mean? Terraforming won't accelerate simply by using the meteorites. One of the 10 evils has taken possession of a disaster meteorite. The 10 evils. My heart instantly sank. I had expected it, but actually hearing it was a different matter. Is it the poisoner? You know. She is the only one who uses Thousand Spirits poison. But there was still a part that I didn't understand. Then why are you poisoned? If you knew that the opponent was the poisoner, shouldn't you have avoided facing her from the front? I was trying to convince her. Convince? You? Then a scene belatedly popped up. Yu Zhonghyuk said. I wanted to make her a companion. Companion. I see. I remembered now. Poisoner Li Xiaohua was Yu Zhonghyuk's companion in the 2nd round. The 10 evils weren't always opponents. Just like armed fortress master Gong Pildu changed in this round, Li Xiaohua was transformed into a companion in several rounds, including the first regression. In all other regressions so far, Poisoner Li Xiaohua was one of the few companions that Yu Zhonghyuk could rely on. You did something that isn't like you. I admit it. I was pathetic. She isn't the person I remember. I knew it. Still, I wanted to believe for a moment that the woman in my memories was still alive. I wanted to be with her again. I couldn't help opening my mouth at the loneliness that he had buried deeply. In his 2nd life, Li Xiaohua didn't last long, but she was Yu Zhonghyuk's lover. I understand. Yu Zhonghyuk was silent for a moment. You are talking as if you have regressed before. I don't need to regress to understand. I knew that I shouldn't speak about understanding. Still, I wanted to say it. Since he wouldn't receive understanding from anyone in the future, I thought I could say this. The character Yu Zhonghyuk is deeply shaken. The character Yu Zhonghyuk has received a faint consolation. Strange. You obviously aren't a regressor. But I feel like you really understand these emotions. Is this also the power of a prophet? I didn't answer, making Yu Jong-hyuk continue speaking. Of course, you aren't a good person. You are the unscrupulous person who kidnapped my sister. When did I kidnap her? I just protected her. You must have understood with lie detection. Kim Dokja. We stopped talking at Han Soo-young's tense voice. The road from Chonho Bridge to Gangdong was visible. The great hall emitted a bright light and something fell towards Gangdong-gu. Damn it, it was already happening. We fully entered Gangdong-gu and the density of the strange grasses covering the ground increased. Dirty trees grew between buildings and there were small beasts running on the trees. Gangdong-gu was already half of another world. Han Soo-young bit her lips and asked, "Are we too late? What if the disaster has already awakened?" It hasn't happened yet. Then we would have received the scenario. We took a few more steps and saw several markings on the ground. It looked like graffiti, but it was actually a territorial display. It was a warning that no one should enter. From here on, it was the area of the poisoner. Like the other wanderers, she settled in Gangdong-gu and started to expand her base. The progress was faster than I expected. Han Soo-young said, "If this group is well guarded, it won't be easy to attack." Have you thought of something? No. I didn't intend to wage an all-out war in the first place. We only need the meteorite. We can just steal it. I will buy time while you take the meteorite. However, it wouldn't be so easy. The story might be different if I had an assistant like the Wanderer King. Yu Jong-hyuk interrupted. There is no need to rush. Even if the disaster begins, the disaster of questions is a disaster that can be suppressed at an early stage. An early suppression. Indeed, it was possible for Yu Jong-hyuk. Early suppression? Who will do that? Are you a half-god? Of course it should be you. Weren't you thinking about it anyway? Why do you think that? You have already woken up the guide and received the way of the wind. Based on his tone, he was slightly angered that I had taken the way of the wind that he was supposed to learn. I said with a smile. I didn't learn it. Why? There wasn't enough time? I'm actually glad. No, I don't have talent. I could feel Yu Jong-hyuk's deep contempt in his silence. You, from the beginning. There are people. The moment I heard Han Soo-young's words, I raised unbroken faith. It was the territory of one of the 10 evils, so the people would naturally belong to their group. I entrusted Yu Jong-hyuk to Han Soo-young's avatar. I will be gone for a while, so take him. Do you understand? The people were getting closer. But something felt strange. Usually it wasn't so loud when a single group moved. Then the clear voice of a woman was heard in front of us. Everybody run towards Chonho Bridge. It wasn't the poisoners group. They weren't as powerful as the Wanderer King's group, but some people who survived the poisoners group were escaping from Gangdong-gu. The unarmed survivors gasped for air when they found us. Oh, out of the way. Hurry. Terrible arrows came flying towards them. The man who spoke to me fell down after being hit by an arrow. The man's back quickly became discolored and blackened. It was poison. Get those scum. The poisoners group. Dozens of men and women simultaneously fired arrows. The moment we tried to avoid it by moving behind a building, threads of silk spread out in the air. Dozens of webs were arranged at once, causing the arrows to become tangled in the thread and not go any further. Han Soo-young's eyes widened. What the hell is that technique? In fact, it was fired from behind the poisoners group. The thread was like steel wire. The sharpness of the thread caused the legs of people to fly through the air. Quack. All the threads were connected to one woman. The woman wearing a tight black battle suit flew through the air. 2 knives stretched out from the fingers of the woman, brilliantly riding the thread of magic. The woman freely manipulated the length of the thread and she swept away the poisoners group in an instant. There wasn't any hesitation in her hand. The movements were beyond beautiful. The combination of stats and skills showed that she didn't have an ordinary sponsor. The information of this person can't be read in character list. This person isn't registered in character list. She wasn't even on the character list. Han Soo-young muttered. Hey, that woman. I knew without her saying anything. It was because this woman was someone I knew. Yusenga SSI? I hadn't met her in 2 days, yet she was completely different from the girl I knew. Chapter 82. SSS Grade Talent. Part 2. The bodies of her enemies were torn apart whenever Yusenga's daggers moved. Amazing. Was this really the Yusenga that I knew? There weren't many skills that could show such power against a large group. At the present time, it was probably just Armed Fortress Master Gong Pildu's Armed Zone and Han Soo-young's avatar. Yet Yusenga was showing such power without such a great skill. How did she become so strong? What was this talent? Yu Jonghyuk spoke as if he had read my thoughts. She grew faster because you aren't around. You seem to have no aptitude for raising your fellow companions. It is the same with Li Hyunsung. They grew to this extent because I pushed them in the beginning. Actually, I didn't really believe it, but I wanted to say it. Damn, why did she get stronger when I wasn't around? Why didn't I seem to be much help? Hey! A voice was heard. I nodded at Han Soo-young's words. I couldn't be overwhelmed by Yusenga forever. In any case, there were many enemies and Yusenga was alone. Yusenga SSI, this way. Yusenga stopped when she heard my words. She clearly hadn't expected to meet me in this place. Han Soo-young, please. Han Soo-young triggered avatar like she was waiting. Dozens of avatars disturbed the vision of the poisoners group and I safely made contact with Yusenga. Dr. SSI? How are you? Let's talk after moving. The group members were chasing from afar. Fortunately, the survivors seemed to have escaped safely through Gangdong Bridge. The problem was on our side. Go back to the high-rise buildings. The most important step is to go up and secure visibility. As expected, Yu Jonghyuk's judgment was valid. I might have read all of Ways of Survival, but I couldn't make battlefield judgments like Yu Jonghyuk. Then Yu Jonghyuk followed with meaningful words. And that woman, you should be careful of her. Be careful? Who? Yu Jonghyuk didn't say anything else. We quickly hid inside a nearby high-rise building. The monsters suddenly flooded the area, probably due to the turmoil, and just narrowly missed our tail. They soon gave up and returned to Inner Gangdong. I looked back at Yusenga. Yusenga SSI, are you okay? Yes, I'm fine. Dr. SSI? Yes, I'm also fine. It had only been a few days, but the conversation was awkward. It felt like I was meeting an alumni from high school, 10 years after graduation. I looked away from her in her tight battle suit and opened her mouth. I couldn't figure out what to ask. In the meantime, I looked at Han Soo-young. Yusenga saw Yu Jonghyuk being carried on the back of Han Soo-young's avatar and gave me an unknown smile. Dr. SSI must have done a lot in the meantime. It was time to listen to a short story. After the Absolute Throne was smashed, Yusenga fell to Gongdong-gu. Fortunately, there was someone who fell with her. Gong Pildu was with you? Yes. Ajusi helped me a lot. Seeing that she was calling him Ajusi, they seemed to have become quite familiar with each other. Where is Gong Pildu? 2 days ago, he was injured while we were fighting the Gongdong-gu group. It was while trying to save me. Many surprising things kept happening today. 10 evils Gong Pildu risked himself in order to save someone else. Yusenga bowed her head and spoke with difficulty. In the end, Ajusi lured them to Han River. Yusenga bit her lips and a poisonous expression filled her face. I suddenly realized why Yusenga killed the poisoners group without hesitation. I spoke to comfort her. Gong Pildu is probably okay. Don't worry. I had a contract with Defense Master, so I would know immediately when Gong Pildu died. I would be penalized according to the terms of the contract. The fact that there was no reaction meant that Gong Pildu was alive somewhere. Like the poisoner, Gong Pildu was also part of the 10 evils. It wasn't that easy for him to die. Where did you get those clothes and the dagger? This. After separating from Gong Pildu, Yusenga found the green meteorite. The green meteorite was a meteorite containing rare items. I checked the items she had. I remembered that there was a meteorite containing these items in the vicinity of Chanhodong. Ancient Assassin's Dagger, Rich Cat's Leather Suit. Both were excellent S-grade items. The Ancient Assassin's Dagger had the option of increasing damage to distant enemies, while the Rich Cat's Leather Suit increased movement speed the longer the duration of the attack. They are great items. Yes, I am able to fight well, thanks to these items. Yusenga smiled, and then the quietly listening Han Suyong spoke up. HRMM, are you sure that's all? Huh? Let's say that you accidentally got the items. But it doesn't make sense to have such combat skills with barely any items. Who the hell is your sponsor? How did you raise quick movements or dagger mastery so quickly? It is impossible for the growth to be so fast even with a growth package. Who are you? Me? I am the first apostle. Yusenga raised her weapon without speaking. Calm down, Yusenga SSI. This person isn't an enemy. Yusenga looked at me with disbelief. Are you friends now? We aren't friends. The Chunmuro group members died because of that person. Surely you haven't forgotten? Yusenga was the deputy of Chunmuro while I was absent. Therefore, her affection towards the Chunmuro members would be much deeper than mine. Han Suyong said, Chunmuro? Ah, I see. You are that woman? Yusenga narrowed her eyes at the words. Han Suyong smiled and added, Hey, Kim Dokja. I am a bad person, but I am also a good judge. She has a big sponsor behind her. You. When I saw her at Chunmuro, she wasn't that strong. Isn't it strange? She can't grow so explosively in such a short period of time, even if she has a narrative grade sponsor. Maybe if she has a SSS grade accelerated growth skill. How can many constellations can provide such support to South Korea? My heart wanted to deny it, but rationally, I knew that Han Suyong was right. There was also Yu Jonghyuk's words from a short while ago. In addition, Yusenga had been hiding her sponsor from me. Yusenga's troubled eyes met mine. I used to think that Yusenga's sponsor was abandoned lover of the labyrinth. The only person who could find the path through the magic room was the person who handed the thread to Theseus in Deadless Labyrinth, Ariadne. But as Han Suyong said, it was impossible for her to grow to such a degree with Ariadne's sponsorship. In addition, the movements that she showed while moving through the air in the previous battle was closer to the Hermes walking method than air steps. Ariadne's incarnation couldn't use Hermes' stigma. I was about to open my mouth when something unexpected happened. Haha, everyone. How have you been? Damn it, this timing. I immediately looked out the window. A new Dakibi was floating in the sky. The participants in this scenario are quite hasty. There is still a week before the start of the scenario, and people are already waking up a disaster. Are you curious about the next scenario? It wasn't the level of Baihyung's nonsense, but it was still talking nonsense. Perhaps there was no one in charge, so this low-grade Dakibi took their place. The Dakibi have left their positions, so I will be here for this period, haha. Now have you all eaten your fill? You do know that this event can't be skipped, right? This wasn't good. It was a really bad development. I want to do that, but I won't be a Dakibi if I don't give scenarios. The fact that a scenario was appearing now told me one thing. The sub-scenario, disaster prevention, has arrived. It meant that the outbreak of a disaster was just around the corner. Plus. Sub-scenario, disaster prevention. Category, sub. Difficulty, S. Clear conditions, unknown powers in Gondonggu are trying to hatch one of the disasters. Defeat them and stop the incoming disaster. Time limit, 2 hours. Compensation, 22,000 coins. Failure, early emergence of the disaster of questions. Plus. Since we received the disaster prevention scenario, the poisoners group would have received the defend the disaster scenario. The damned Akibis were still trying to be part of this unforeseen situation. I looked at the party members and said, "It isn't the time for us to fight. Now we have to handle this situation." Han Suyang and Yu Senga nodded at the same time. The poisoners group was based in Chanhogong of Guangdonggu. To be exact, it was an area filled with churches and a cathedral. If their purpose was to awaken the disaster early, it was a good choice to choose a religious area. The prayers of those who lost their places would create an environment suitable for hatching the disaster. Han Suyang finished scouting and opened her mouth. The road with the lowest level of terraforming is in the northeast, centered on the base. It is 16 Chanjamaro. If we go this way, we can reach the base in the shortest time. But the defenses are formidable. I nodded. We didn't have time, so we had to go through the fastest way. It's okay. We have to reach that building as quickly as possible. Han Suyang and Yu Senga SSI will take the front. Don't fight each other. I understand. Yu Zhonghyuk couldn't help right now, so I decided to leave him on the roof of the high-rise building with Han Suyang's avatar. His role was to watch the battlefield. Yu Zhonghyuk didn't express much dissatisfaction. He just gave this piece of advice. If possible, get rid of them before the disaster hatches. Without way of the wind, the initial suppression of the disaster of questions is almost impossible. Of course, I wanted to do that if possible. Let's go. The moment I gave the signal, we jumped down the building. Han Suyang used avatar and took the lead. Dozens of avatars jumped onto the road and attracted the attention of the poisoners group. What? Kill them. As the confused group members chased after the avatars, thin and transparent thread filled the air. Quack. The people chasing after the avatars were caught by sharp threads and their legs were cut off. This wasn't the end. There was another strong thread in the location where the people fell. Their heads were cut off and flew through the air. It was a terrifying double trap designed by calculating the angle of the fall. Han Suyang clicked her tongue. She is brutal. You aren't someone who should be saying that. Apart from their feelings towards each other, the combination of the two was worth looking at. No, it was very useful. Thanks to their help, I was able to dig into the center of the base while avoiding their surveillance. It wasn't difficult to find the disaster meteorite. It was a huge meteorite over 8 meters high. It emitted an ominous aura and seemed to say, "I am the disaster." Certainly, it felt like the fire dragon was no comparison. If I couldn't stop this disaster, Seoul would surely be destroyed. Then a woman appeared next to the meteorite. She had hair as white as snow. As I saw the lips that were like red flowers on a snowy mountain, I could see Yu Zhonghyuk's taste. The cold and glassy eyes stared at me, and I felt a terrible spirit emerge from her body. It made my skin crawl. It was an overwhelming feeling compared to Gong Pildu. I see. Did she also receive the power of the disaster meteorite? Who are you? One of the 10 evils, the poisoner Lee Sealwa asked. Chapter 83. SSS Grade Talent. Part 3. There were 3 ways to wake up a disaster meteorite. One was to let the meteorite hatch in line with the scenario. The second method was to draw out the power of the disaster meteorite in advance. The third and fastest way was to supply magic power to the disaster meteorite. Dozens of Lee Sealwa's group members were praying. A faint magic power was flowing out of their bodies into the disaster meteorite. The hatching ceremony. They had chosen the third method. Based on the meteorite's heavy shaking, the disaster would hatch in 30 minutes. I looked at Lee Sealwa and opened my mouth. Won't you stop? Unless you want to die together. What are you thinking? It was strange. In the third round of regression in the original, there was no one foolish enough to wake up the disaster, even if they did borrow the power of the disaster. Yu Jong-hyuk must have visited Lee Seolwa in advance, because he knew about it. Stop hatching the disaster meteorite. Then I will spare you. Lee Seolwa looked at me quietly. What if I don't want to? You'll die here. Poisoner Lee Seolwa had an expression of ridicule on her face. Her hands moved, and the humans praying towards the disaster turned towards me at the same time. The 8th grade outside species lower human Nam Minyak has showed hostility towards you. The 8th grade outside species lower human Young Minji has showed hostility towards you. The 8th grade outside species lower human King Gapple has showed hostility towards you. Antennae grew on their heads, and their hands turned sharp like rakes. These wanderers seemed to become transformed humans rather than wolves. There was a worrisome point. It is strange. Isn't transforming humans the power of the disaster meteorite? I murmured at the same time that Lee Seolwa shouted, "Die!" The loyalists leaped into their air, their wings spreading out. I aimed the hilt towards them. Blade of Faith is activated. The special option of Unbroken Faith is activated. The ether property is converted to fire. White flames split apart the air. All species with insect properties were weak to fire. The ether flames of Unbroken Faith spread to the skin of the lower humans. 1 to 2, 2 to 3. Keek. The flames burned the skin of the lower humans. I cut off the legs and wings of the lower humans. Kayat. Magic power gushed out and burned the lower humans in a flash. It was the same in the case of the werewolves. They walked a path other than human, and I didn't receive a penalty from killing them. I broke through the flames and ran towards Lee Seolwa. For the first time, Unbroken Faith was blocked. Lee Seolwa's fingernails and forearms were tinged with a dark light. The power of the disaster increased the level of the stigmas. By borrowing the power of the disaster, her poisonous nails could block the Blade of Faith. However, that didn't mean she could prevent all damage. Quack! Sparks flew, and Lee Seolwa's body was pushed back a few steps. It would be strange if this didn't happen. My current overall stats were the highest among all incarnations apart from Yu Jong-hyuk. I might have no talent, but I wasn't weak among the incarnations. Give up. It won't be good for you if the disaster hatches now. Doesn't this sub-scenario have no penalty for failure? Lee Seolwa looked towards the disaster meteorite nervously. There was a change in the atmosphere. It felt like she was aiming at the disaster rather than power from the disaster meteorite. It was strange. Even a person who didn't read the original novel would expect Seoul to be destroyed when a disaster hatched. Then why did she want to wake up the disaster? The exclusive skill, character list is activated. Plus. Character information, name, Lee Seolwa. Age, 26 years old. Constellation support, Guam Divine Doctor, Guam equals pen name of Hyo Jun, court physician who wrote Dongguye Bogum, a medical text that showed up in a previous chapter. Private attribute, competent physician, rare, master of poison, rare. Exclusive skills, weapons training LV7, love affair demon LV4, emit deadly poison LV5, new poison preparation LV4, counteract poison LV5. Stigma, deadly poison LV4, thousand spirits poison LV4, crossroad of life and death LV3. Overall stats, physique LV44, plus 10, strength LV42, plus 10, agility LV44, plus 10, magic. Power LV35, plus 10. Overall evaluation, the current comprehensive evaluation is currently in progress. Asterisk this character is currently infected with a parasite. Asterisk the parasite is controlling the body of the character. Asterisk some of parasite antagonist stats will be transferred to the character. Plus. Damn. I didn't think her condition would be like this. Due to the effect of your exclusive attribute, the memory effect of some scenes have increased. In my head, pages flipped and the sentences of some pages flowed over my retinas. There are 5 dominant species in the world of Chronos. The Velkia in the east, the parasites in the west, the Immuntar in the south and the Mistalin in the north. Finally, the Inba in the center. I avoided the poisonous attack and kicked her back, causing her to lose her balance. Lee Sealwa rolled around the ground and groaned. I watched Lee Sealwa and opened my mouth. The fifth scenario is a scenario where the disasters of Kronos was made into a motif. Lee Sealwa's eyes shook as she heard disasters of Kronos. On the day that Kronos was destroyed, the 5 dominant species of Kronos elected one hero from each species. The 5 chosen heroes shamefully survived the destruction and carried on Kronos' path. They were sent to another through a contract with the star stream. They came to that world, encountered other species, and promised their lives in exchange for stopping the disaster there. A non-human cry emerged from Lee Sealwa's mouth at the story. They were called guides. Kit. How does a human of Earth know such things? How did I know? I knew, because I saw it in a book. You aren't Lee Sealwa. The disasters were hatching faster than the original. There were no humans who would do such a thing. Parasite Queen Antinous. Why is a guide trying to wake up the disaster? Only a fallen guide would dream of such a thing. The 5th grade parasite Antinous is looking at you. Parasites were a parasitic species that lived through other species. Now Lee Sealwa was being manipulated by one of the guides. I looked at the dead bodies of the lower humans. Just like with Lycaon's meteorite, it wasn't the power of the disaster but the power of Kronos' guide that promoted the human transformation. Why are you infecting the humans here? Why are you doing this? Kiek. What do you get for waking up the disaster early? Isn't the purpose of the guides to prevent the disaster along with the people of this world and unite with us to build a new world? Why are you trying to destroy the terraformed world? Kikik, kikikik. This is an act that violates your mission. It isn't too late, so get out of her body right now. Do the right thing, Guide Antinous. If possible, I didn't want to kill Lee Sealwa. Maybe Yu Jongyuk would do the same. The poisoner became one of the 10 evils after being infected by the parasite. Lee Sealwa might not be one of the 10 evils if the infection was removed. It was why Yu Jongyuk's conversation didn't work. He tried to protect his old lover from the parasite queen. The messages of the midday tryst blinked in the air. Kill her. It was Yu Jongyuk. The important thing isn't her life, but the survival of this world. Act wisely, Kim Dokja. Due to the far distance, I couldn't see what Yu Jongyuk's expression was like. He had to worry about this world rather than the woman to whom he once gave his affection. Maybe this was the nature of a hero. I said. Then you will be unhappy. It doesn't matter. Yu Jongyuk's mochi was steady and firm. But I knew. If Lee Sealwa died here, Yu Jongyuk would someday collapse. Kayat. The deaths of his acquaintances would pile up, gnawing at Yu Jongyuk's memories and making his mind weary. Kit. You are just a human. The parasite queen spoke through Lee Sealwa's mouth. Hatred for humans was ingrained in her tone. In fact, I knew why she hated humans so much. However, the situation wasn't relaxed enough for me to think about her feelings. Kit. Die. Black liquid started to flow from Lee Sealwa's body. The 1,000 spirits poison. This was when Lee Sealwa's talent started to be shown off. Black liquid shot from her fingernails towards me. I took a few steps back while the 1,000 spirits poison melted the ground. If Yu Jongyuk was an ordinary incarnation, he would have already become like this ground. Yu Jongyuk asked. Do you have a countermeasure to the 1,000 spirits poison? I do. I also wasn't an ordinary person. Strictly speaking, I wasn't an incarnation. Lee Sealwa's poison spread through the air towards me. It felt like it had its own will as the poison freely moved through the air and found my weakness. A few drops splashed on my thighs and then my forearms. A part of the suit hit by 1,000 spirits poison started to melt. A satisfied smile appeared on Lee Sealwa's face. However, this was an early judgment. I ran through the poison and punched her hard in the belly, throwing her back. Kiet! She flew through the air, with a terrible cry. My skin touched by the thousand spirits poison showed some discoloration, but it soon returned to its original color. Lee Sealwa was upset. Kick, the thousand poisons resistance? Horror was in her eyes. Thousand poisons resistance was the terror of all beings who used poison. However, I didn't have thousand poisons resistance or immunity to 10,000 poisons. Antinous, you don't know the sponsor behind your host? I put my hand in my pocket. That's why you don't know. You don't know, but I'm sure it's inside that body. Right? After a while, a book appeared in my hands. A constellation worried about the degradation of Oriental medicine has revealed his own modifier. The constellation Guam Divine Doctor looks at you with amazement. Kayat. Dongui Bogum unfinished book. It was one of the greatest Oriental medicine records of the East. The Dongui Bogum was an item that appeared in the 5-person dungeon during the king's qualifications. I had a hard time collecting this. During the king's qualification scenario, all the kings were frantically trying to get the 4-een demonic beheading sword. While the kings coveted the 4-een demonic beheading sword, I picked up other items. Many items were thrown away because they didn't know their value. Among them, I was interested in the Dongui Bogum. Internal Medicine, 4th part. External Medicine, 4th part. Various Diseases, 11th part. Remedies, 3rd part. Acupuncture, 1st part. Table of Contents, 2nd part. It was a star relic that could be completed after 25 parts were collected. Unfortunately, I only collected 8 pieces, but that alone was enough to see an effect. Even if I only collected 8 parts, the Dongui Bogum had the effect of the S-grade immunity to poison bead. The effect of the Dongui Bogum, incomplete, has been activated. Your body has temporarily gained the poison resistance ability. The baffled Lee Sealwa shouted. How? The thousand spirits poison. I know. Thousand spirits poison is a poison that can't be counteracted with ordinary poison resistance. But it is possible for the Dongui Bogum. Why do you think that is? The constellation Guam Divine Doctor is smiling faintly. One constellation faintly glowed as if in response. It is because the constellation who made the thousand spirits poison is the author of Dongui Bogum.